Describe healing in your words in a sentence.
Dr. Sarno called it knowledge therapy. I refer to it as awakening. When you start awakening, which would be to start to realize I'm not this body, I'm not my mind, I am the consciousness that inhabits it, that's when the real healing takes place. Those are the people who heal deeply, the deepest. But like I said, it depends on where you're at on this consciousness scale. Something else could help somebody to heal. Like saying it's oxygen flow. That might help somebody to heal, just saying that. But some people need more than that. So generally speaking, it's about becoming more conscious. That's what's happening. They think, when people think there's something wrong with their body, they're screwed right there.
Well, welcome to the Intentional Leadership Podcast. We are honored to have Steve Ozanich, the mind-body health consultant. He's been working with chronic pain for 30 years, and it's all started with his own chronic pain, and we're going to get deep into that today. Steve has his MBA from Youngstown, as well as a musician and a professional golf swing expert, and he is based in Ohio, and we are going to talk about his book, TMS syndrome, the great pain deception. And we're excited because it's going to be out in Audible soon, probably by the time you hear this podcast. Welcome, Steve.
Hi there. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah. So you spent 30 years in chronic pain, saw the best doctors, and were almost ready to have surgery. And then without the procedure, you were healed. What happened?
Yes. I actually came into this world with health problems. I was 7 years old. I had something called rheumatic fever. I don't hear about it as much as I used to, but I think people still get it. And then, of course, all the other childhood things, tonsillitis and tonsillectomy. But my back pain started right around between 13 and 14 years old, which is pretty young, but not the youngest. I've seen quite a bit younger in my work as well. And then I had, dozens of other problems. And then in the 1980s, all kinds of tragedies started happening in my life, which really started the spiritual awakening at that point. That's when it started. The tragedy pushes you to enlightenment, right? But in the 90s, the symptoms got really bad. I had a couple hundred symptoms, and I was probably nearing death at that point. I would say I lost about 50 pounds, and I'm a trainer. I've always been in top shape. 50 pounds to me is like someone losing 250 pounds. I started losing my vision. I couldn't see people's heads. There was just a black bar there. And that was really frightening. Really frightening. It's called tunnel vision, but actually medically scotoma. Screeching in my ear, and I started having vertigo, falling down. That was the most frightening thing by far. When you start falling down and you can't orient and you can't stand up. But on and on and on and on. But the back pain always remained. That was my comfort zone, I like to call that. There's always that one symptom your brain likes to go back to when it needs to. It never left. And it got really bad in the 1990s, late 90s specifically. And actually, at one point, my leg became paralyzed, my left leg. Not completely, but I lost my foot, my calf, and my hamstring on my left leg. There was no more reflexes in my ankle or my knee. I still had the quadricep in my knee, so I could stand, but I had to drag my leg for a year. So, it was time to see a doctor at that point, right? I didn't want to. I knew surgery was inevitable, but I didn't want to. But at that point, I pretty much had to. So we took an MRI, and the MRI shows ostensibly a pinched nerve, of course. That's what they almost always show. There's no room for the nerve to come out at all. It's totally surrounded by bone, which is called osteophytes. So, and the herniations, of course, herniated disc. And of course, the surgeon recommended surgery, which I didn't want to have. But in the meantime, divine intervention happened. A friend of mine introduced me to Dr. John Sarno's work at the New York University Medical Center. And His book was called Healing Back Pain.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's a top back pain book in history. And I read it and I thought he was a quack. I threw the book because he was saying it's all an emotional process. And I'm looking at my MRI, and it's a pinched nerve, and my foot's dropped. And it hurts so bad you can't even think. The doctors used to say, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your pain? And I would say 11. 11. I couldn't think. I couldn't walk. I was bedbound for like 6 months. So I thought he was a quack, and then I got worse, which is the subtitle of my book, Faulty Medical Advice is Making Us Worse, although his wasn't the faulty advice. And I decided to go back to it because people that are suffering or get desperate, I mean, really desperate, and they'll latch on to anything at some point because there's no hope.
Mm-hmm.
People who are seeking hope will latch onto anything. So I went back to it and I started to read it with an open mind and an open heart because I didn't do that the first time. I read it through my ego. And I began to see the genius in it. And so that's when it really began at that point. The healing began. It took me a while because I didn't have anybody like me to come to. There was nobody to go to at that time, except him, Dr. Sarno, and he wouldn't see us because he wanted you to live in the tri-state area because he wanted to follow up continuously. So I fought through it on my own and figured it out, and people started asking me, and I healed. I healed from all of my health problems in 26 years ago. It's hard to believe that time's gone by that fast, but people were asking me for my help. Would you please help me? And of course I would say, okay. They'd say, how'd you do that? I'd say, I don't know. So when you're doing it, you're in the moment. And to be able to teach it to somebody, you have to understand what happened there, right? So I started to reverse engineer everything, looking near my rearview mirror. It's like, oh, okay. All right, I'm getting it. I had become present, which, used to be called mindfulness, but and I made the spiritual changes necessary, and psychologically, I did it on my own. And I healed. That was 26 years ago. I haven't had any symptoms in 26 years. And I published The Great Pain Deception. Mm-hmm. And it's helping more people to heal than I could have imagined. I thought it was going to be, migraines and back pain and skin problems and maybe some digestion problems, but everything. It still shocks me today that they're healing from everything. And the reason is because it's all the same cause. It's all the same cause. Our health problems, they're just manifesting differently. That's all. They're manifesting in different forms.
Yeah. Yeah, you just covered a whole.
And that's.
One of the things that jumps out at me is you claim, and this is what will stop people cold, is that if the MRI is showing you have a herniated disc, that the disc may not actually be the problem. So if you can visually see it, how is it not the problem?
Yeah, that's like you said, I like how you said that stops people cold. It actually makes them angry. I get a lot of angry letters. I have 5 herniated discs and you're not going to tell me it's an emotional thing, because my dad was a doctor and I have 5 degrees, college degrees, that they're fighting it intellectually when it's actually their answer. It's their answer. People just simply don't want to heal. That's why I wrote the 3rd book, the myths and the lies, and the misunderstandings. That's kind of why I was throwing Dr. Sarno's book and rejecting it when he said, nothing's pinched. He said, nothing's pinched. And I'm looking at it, and my foot's dropping down and there's no reflexes. But his explanation was absolutely brilliant, that it's actually a loss of oxygen to the nerve. that causes a deep pain. What did he say? It caused, oh, by the way, the condition we're talking about is called TMS. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's what he called it. At first, he called it Tension Myositis Syndrome. Myo meaning muscle. But as he went along in his career, he realized, it's more than muscle. It's nerves and tendons and all kinds of other things. So he changed the phrase TMS to Tension Myoneural Syndrome. And then at the end of his career and the end of his life, he realized it's everything. So he changed that phrase TMS to the mind-body syndrome. And that's where it stands today. It's called the mind-body syndrome, okay? It's a mental, emotional, spiritual problem. That's what it is.
Right.
Well, but his explanation was that your brain is reducing the blood flow just a little bit in your back. And when it does that, it takes the oxygen with it. There's no more oxygen. And if you don't get oxygen to your cells and nerves, it produces what he said that was the most painful thing he had ever seen in clinical medicine. And he didn't speak in hyperbolic terms. He was a very genuine, down-to-earth person. He rarely talked like that. And he was the director of the outpatient center at the Howard Rusk Institute at NYU. He had seen just about everything for decades. For him to say it's the most painful thing in clinical medicine, he meant it. I've seen people pass out in front of me from it. They had an attack where the brain will withdraw the blood. They just pass out and hit the floor. A lot of friends. So at first I didn't believe him, but I was desperate. So I latched onto it. And thank God that I did, because it saved my life at some point. And the feeling came back in the leg. The reflexes came back in the leg. They said it never would. And the herniation is still there. The stenosis is still there. The lack of opening for the nerve is still there. So that's proof that those aren't the causes. And he proved clinically that herniated discs don't cause back pain, and stenosis does not, and scoliosis and whatever they want to call it, whatever osis they decide to call it today, prolapsed or sequestered disc, there's all kinds of names for it. They simply don't cause pain. There's not one study ever done that shows that they do cause pain. Every study, in fact, proves they do not cause pain. Even the surgeons are finally buying into it because of their own back pain. And Dr. Sarno's helped spine surgeons to heal, and they're out there saying the same thing. These things do not cause pain, but the people want to believe that they do. They don't want to hear that they don't, so they get mad like I did. So I can't judge people because I was one of those people. I actually was furious. So I don't judge anybody. I just sit back and wait for people to come this way. If you want to heal, I can show you how. Right. Fortunately, if people that contact me, they're ready to heal at that point. Although they'll try everything else first. They'll try injections and surgery and core strengthening and whatever it is. And those things work for a little while. Everything works a little while, but they're not cures. They're not, because there's nothing wrong with the back. It's an emotional, spiritual process. Those are the people that are healing.
How many people come to you? I mean, everybody's probably coming to you desperately, in point of desperation, just because, like you say, people are try everything. And here, especially, people think, I'm going to go to the doctor, they'll fix it, or I'll take another pill and that should take care of it. How many times when you say people are angry when they're talking to you, do they just walk away versus do they just have that anger and then finally you let them have it and then they just continue to go down the path? I mean, where are people when they're actually coming to you?
Publicly, yeah, they walk away, they get angry. By the time they hire me to consult with them, they're ready to listen at that point.
Okay.
Although there's a handful of people that put up a fight as well. But 99.999% of the people, they're ready by the time they come to me. It's publicly that I don't try to talk about it too much. Especially if you go into pain forums, They do not want to hear about healing at all, nothing, because the forum's about just keeping it going. I always get my profiles deleted if I walk in and say, I can help you. They delete my profile immediately because they don't want to hear that.
Well, it's the great pain deception. So who's decepting who? Who's deceiving whom, I guess, and what's it costing people?
Oh, Drew, that word deception is the operative word in that title. And that took me a month of talking to the top quantum healers to use that word. I first called it the great pain lie and all that. But, people aren't lying if they don't know what's going on. They're not really lying. They're passing on poor information, but they're not specifically lying, right? So deception's a good word for 3 reasons. The first reason is there is a small handful of, I call them sick care practitioners instead of healthcare practitioners, who know what you're doing doesn't work. They know it. And they'll even whisper to me sometimes, whether it's a chiropractor or a surgeon, I know it doesn't work, but it's my job. That's deception, but that's only small. Most of the people really want to help. Most of the people in the what's called an industry, it's not a community, it's an industry. They want to help. Okay. And like Dr. Sarno said, Steve, don't be too tough on them. They don't know. Mm-hmm. It's like knacking a baby for crying. Why would you do that? The baby doesn't know. It doesn't understand. But so the first one is that some people are deceiving people. The second reason I use the word deception is because your brain is deceiving you, making you think something's wrong with your body. Whether it's pain or disease, it doesn't matter. These aren't body problems. There's a cause for all of those. The body just doesn't go bad. My body went bad. No, it doesn't. Something caused it to go bad. Okay. And the third reason I used the word deception was because of something called self-deception. It was an old psychological term that I dug up and reintroduced. Self-deception means you now believe that the lie is true. That I'm happy in my life and my marriage is perfect and I love my job and I understand everything that's wrong with me. Yeah, that's all self-deception because we don't know. We're mostly unconscious people. We're 95% unconscious. I don't know where they get that number from, but no scientist or psychologist seems to disagree with it. So I'll accept it as true. I don't know how they measure it, but we're only 5% conscious. And so we have to be very careful where we put that consciousness because when people have pain or disease, there's a problem with consciousness, that I call spirituality, but you can call it whatever you want. Mm-hmm. Whatever you want.
So we have the deception and we have consciousness, which, imagine moving 5% to, 6% or 7%, that would be phenomenal. But the brain or the body rather is the messenger, is what you say. And the pain is the message. What is the body trying to say through that pain?
Well, I could write a book on that. What you just
book number 4.
Yeah, which I am. I'm working on a new one. But that's a loaded question. It depends on your perspective. Okay. I just put up a new victory video. This young kid who was a college basketball player had knee pain so bad, and he went to all of these experts. Everyone thinks they have the answer, right? Everyone thinks they have the answer. And he even went to this guy who was supposed to be the knee guru in America. They went to a camp. You got jumper's knee. I'll show you how to get rid of it. Well, he went through the camp and it didn't help. But he read my book and the pain disappeared. It's gone. Okay. But at the beginning of his video, I put the phrase up, pain is a forewarning that change is coming. So that's one way to look at it. But if you look at it through the minds of the geniuses came before us, they'll tell you pain is a doorway into yourself, just like disease. I don't make any distinction between pain and disease. They're the same thing. It's just a problem that's manifesting differently. That's all. Because pain sometimes will manifest and switch into disease, we should probably talk about Dr. Sarno's greatest discovery, which is the symptom imperative phenomenon. Now, it's a strange phrase, I know.
I was just going to say, can you repeat that? Because that one missed, yeah.
Yeah, the symptom imperative phenomenon. It's a phrase that he coined. I wrote, my second book was talking about his top 10 discoveries. Oh, there it is. Dr. John Sarno's top 10 healing discoveries. It's just a little book to honor him. And if people were confused or scared or didn't understand it, because it can be it could be daunting, I think, if you look at it too much. I just simplified it for everybody, like a David Letterman top 10 list, And in number one, in my opinion, was his discovery of what he called the symptom imperative phenomenon. We call it the SI. He discovered, or observed, I should say, nothing is ever discovered in this world. It's uncovered because everything's already been done. Every truth has already been written. Things are just uncovered by scientists. They're not discovered. That you can say, operate on a disc in your back and the pain will go away. And people will say, that's proof that it's a herniated disc because my pain's gone. Well, it didn't go away. It's now in your shoulder. It's shifted. It's now in the next disc, like Tiger Woods. I've been on a radio show talking about him multiple times. It's not going to work. He's had his 7th back surgery a couple months ago. It's not going to work because there's nothing wrong with his back, okay? He's got this syndrome called TMS. If you operate on one knee, it'll go to the other knee. If you operate on your back, you might get sleeplessness for months at a time, or you might start having ulcers. It can shift into cancers, things like that. You cannot stop it. When you focus on the symptom, which is a tragic thing that the medical industry focuses on, the symptom. That's what, Dr. Sarno said they're trained to get rid of symptoms. That's how they're trained. Don't be too tough on them, Steve. That's how they're trained. If you go in for pain, they're going to try to help you get rid of the pain. If you go in for weakness or sleeplessness or ulcers, they're going to try to help you get rid of the symptom. But that's not healing. Healing is about getting rid of the cause of those things. And that's what he discovered, the cause. And so it will just keep shifting forever. And it can get dangerous. So we have to be very careful with it. The surgeries, by and large, are placebos. And the same thing is true with medicines in general. Now, not everything, of course. There are some things that the body needs, maybe we're lacking, we might need, but I'm talking generally speaking, all surgeries and all medicine are placebos. Generally. And it's been proven clinically, even though people don't want to hear it. I just watched another new documentary on it. Amazing. And my third book talks about the power of the mind, which is really my favorite topic, the power of the mind. Power of the mind. To make you think that the surgery worked, that's how powerful it is.
So let's say I rip my hamstring in half. Do you need surgery?
Yeah. Well, that's something different. That's an injury,
Okay.
But there's another reason for pain. Pain is a gift from nature.
Yeah.
To tell you, hey, back up, get your hand out of the fire. You're standing on glass right now, right? Or you just swallowed poison, right? Yes. The Bible told that God gave us to help us. Yeah, it's important. Yeah. But we're not talking about that. But however, people will often have an injury and they'll think that they hurt themselves when it's actually TMS. So they get confused, and they look at the knee and they'll say, look, the doctor says it's got a torn meniscus. So let's operate on it. Well, it won't work because meniscus tears don't cause pain unless they're extremely acute and have, like you said, torn it in half, right? Mm-hmm. And I've seen thousands of people. I haven't seen them. Thousands have written to me. I've worked with probably hundreds of them. And a couple come to mind. The one lady in New York, she was Russian, and the doctor told her she had a torn meniscus. That's why she was limping. And she recognized it as TMS. And she went back to Russia because she couldn't afford to live in New York anymore. And she said, Steve, I wanted to tell you, I'm in St. Petersburg and I just had an MRI and the doctor says I have no tear at all. this. They overread them all the time, constantly.
Wow.
One guy said he had shoulder pain, and he said, the doctor said I had an 80% tear in my rotator cuff. And I found out about TMS, and I realized I did have TMS instead. So he went to another doctor, and he took an MRI, and the doctor said it was a 10% tear. And Dr. Sofer, who wrote the foreword for my book, Mark Sofer, MD, he was trained by Dr. Sarno in TMS. He told his radiologist, stop how you're wording your reports. You're crippling my patients, how you're wording them. Drastic tear and this and that. And so soften your language, because words have power. Words have power. It is so amazing when I can talk to somebody on Zoom and their pain disappears while they're on Zoom, or the next day or the next week. It happens through the words. Of course, they have to accept those words, right? If you reject them, it's not going to work. So words have power. And when you get diagnosed by something, and I probably told you this the first time I met you, when you get diagnosed by a doctor, you're screwed. Mm-hmm. You've got fibromyalgia, you've got this disease, and you've got HLH, you've got cancer. Now it's lodged in your subconscious field. I've got this thing you can't get over. As long as you believe you got it, you cannot get over it. So Dr. Sarno did the brave and intelligent thing when he told his patients, reject your doctor's words, repudiate the diagnosis, get rid of it. That took courage. And of course, he got attacked by all of his colleagues. But his cardinal sin was helping millions of people to heal. That was his sin as a doctor. They hated him.
Yeah.
They hated him.
Isn't it unfortunate that because it wasn't mainstream according to whatever protocol and rules were made over time, that somehow he's been ostracized and the work he did was not approved and that it didn't work? And he pushed through, he fought it, and he was able to save, tens of thousands.
Millions of people.
Millions. Okay.
His books are in 60 languages, and I talk to people in probably 100 countries out there, Zooming with them. They've got his books, and they've given them to their families, and it has to be in the millions by now, because it's been 50 years, right? Almost 50 years since he started talking about it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So that's a long time to be fighting the pushback of that. And
the machine, he still is. I mean, his work still is, but it's...
So you've taken that on now. Now it's on your shoulders.
Yeah, well, he asked me before he died to please carry on the work. I said, I will. I said, you don't have to tell me. With my last breath, it's going to be TMS. Or maybe my last breath will be, I'm not dead yet.
Well, I know that, my chiropractor, I went and I was playing soccer, messed up my knee playing in the game, acute pain, and got the MRI, just like you said. They said that I had 18% left of that I tore whatever that is, 82% tear. And I said, no, you guys can't be right. I'm still walking on it. And and as long as I don't move laterally, then I'm okay. And the surgeon said no. And so I scheduled a surgery 3 months out. And I went to my chiropractor, and he says, you have an oxygen problem. And this is about the time John Sarno's book came out.
Oh, good.
Or not his, but about, it was, and he says, you have an oxygen problem. And if you give me 45 days, I think I'm going to fix your knee. And I said, well, the best part is I have 90 days because my surgery's in 3 months. And so you can have 89 days. And to this day, I just ignored like you said, I ignored the diagnosis. I just assumed that it was better. And my chiropractor did what I call the spoons and knives routine, which is excruciatingly painful, putting oxygen into the area. So it wasn't the mind-body version of it, but it was getting oxygen into my knee. And my knee is great. I've done an Ironman on it now. I've played soccer. I've still, I'm back. So it was a different form of it. Now, then, as you know, my wife was labeled with something last year, and we personally chose not to learn to pronounce it because we didn't want the diagnosis.
Right.
Plus, it was really hard. But and we on the board while we're in the hospital, because we have to say Western medicine, modern medicine did save her life. That there's no question. However, on the whiteboard, we claim victory, and we pretty much allowed, as hard as it was, for the information to come in, process it, digest it, get what we needed from it, extract that, and then let it pass through and forget it and ignore it. And we turned her hospital room in for 2 weeks into a spa. We had essential oils, we had flowers, we had proper lighting, and we had Barry Goldstein, the Emmy Award-winning Barry Goldstein's music playing in the background, the healing music. And so even though we're on quarantine, people are gowning up, we're locked down. Once you entered that room, people are like, wow, this is different. What's different? And then I know then Janelle had, once she was, I guess, able to, she's then talked to you. And if we want to measure things, we got to measure it somehow, right? We're all business owners or entrepreneurs in this group, mostly. We want to measure it somehow. But her Oura ring changed the day after she talked to you.
Yeah, and that made me feel good. Remember, ultimately, she healed herself. Now they can intervene some. I always use the example of an ulcer. An ulcer is not a bad stomach. It is a tension stress event. Okay. But if you don't get that bleeding stopped, you can die. Yeah. So we may need some help to stop the symptom from killing us. But ultimately, whether it's chemo or radiation and all these crazy things they're doing, it's her that healed it ultimately. That they may have saved her as far as symptom-wise from getting worse. There's no doubt about it. But even cancer, our bodies have to destroy it ourselves. Ultimately, in the end, and the same thing's true with pain, of course. But yeah, the first time I saw her and the second time I saw her, wow, what a beautiful glowing face. It's beautiful. But this work is a shift in consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A shift in consciousness.
And I agree. I've read 2 or 3 of Sarno's books, all of your books, including the one that you just held up, the little, the top 10 list from Letterman. And you're like, wow, I'm open to it. I agree. I've seen it work firsthand. And even then you go, this is kind of different. So when people say, oh, I'm open to it, how do you get them over to, what's the turning point from there? They've gone from anger, they've now accepted it, they're sitting with you, you're talking to them. What is the turning point to belief in them?
Yeah, Dr. Sarno said the tragedy with this syndrome is that people have to get desperate first. And it is. If you're not desperate, people won't listen. They would rather limp around the rest of their lives and use crutches or canes first before they admit that it's TMS, okay? But we have free will. They can do that if they want to. But everyone in the world has TMS, but there's only about 10, 15% can see it consciously, okay? This is the shift in consciousness. And so I remember that was one of the main questions Dr. Sarno got when he did his lectures. How do I get my wife or husband to listen to me, or my friends or my boss to listen to me? He would say, don't even try. Don't even try. Because you can't convert people. They're either ready or they're not. And most people aren't yet, but they will be in their time. I tell people, when you're ready, I'll be here. By the way, I don't heal anybody. I'm not a healer. I'm a teacher. Okay. I'm a teacher. I teach you how to heal yourself. I can't heal you, or I would if I could. I'm my own healer. Like Elle was her own healer. Okay. We might need help from the outside, But they usually have to get ready at some point. There's a great one. He wrote a pretty good book on, after I worked with him, he had tried all kinds of things and nothing worked for his pain. So we did a session and he healed. And he wrote a book on it. He told me, I wrote to you over 200 emails, he told me. I said, you did? I'm really bad with names. I can't remember anybody's name. There's something wrong with my brain. I can't remember people's names. But you did? Yeah. And at the end of every email, you would say, when you're ready to heal, let me know. I do that a lot. So I probably did do that. I say that a lot to everybody. And so he says, it finally dawned on me, you're saying consult with you. Because I can't do it in an email. You know, it takes hours. It takes months, really, but hours to get you going. And he hired me and he healed. You know, he was ready. And so in my third book, which is called, it's a blatant plug, Back Pain Permanent Healing. This is an argument. This is not a healing book, although people are healing with it. I don't know how they're doing it. This is the healing book, The Great Pain Deception. This is a long argument on why Dr. Sarno's correct, why the industry's got it all wrong, and why nobody wants to heal. Okay. And so all through the book, everywhere I had the word ready or readiness, I bolded it. I did a global word check, look for the word ready or readiness, bold. So only a couple people noticed it. To me, that's the key. If you're not ready to heal, you're never going to heal, ever. And so when I threw Dr. Sarno's book, I obviously wasn't ready. I obviously wasn't ready. So once I became ready, so to me, readiness, and I think this is the answer to your question, readiness is the key. Because if you're not ready, it's not going to work. I can tell you everything you need and it will not work at some point.
Right. So back to you as an example, you were not ready. You chucked the book out. You're thinking, Sarno's a whack. And then you decide I'm going to heal. I want to heal. And didn't that happen on a golf course or something? Did I remember that story right?
It's a long book because I wrote in great detail what happened because I wanted to show everybody everything I did wrong too, so they can see it, and everything I did right. But essentially, I got so bad that it kind of forced me into readiness. And I started to read. I went back to get his first book, which is called Mind Over Back Pain, a little dinky little book he wrote. We don't even talk about that book anymore because he's done better work. But I started to read the book and my hands started to swell up. It was amazing. My fingers, like this. I'm looking at my hands. Wow, I can barely bend my fingers. But I'm reading about the autonomic nervous system and how it controls blood flow, which controls oxygen flow. As I'm reading about it, it's happening inside of me. This is how powerful words are and how powerful the mind is. Then I got some deep aches in my chest because the blood was going to the hands instead of to the heart. I wasn't worried for some reason because I guess I understood intuitively what was happening. Change was happening through his words in the book. And so I started pulling on his thread. I started listening to him instead of rejecting him. He said, get more physical. He said, that's the most important thing you have to do. Which I thought, oh man, this guy is crazy. Or I'm crazy. Who's crazier, me or him? Because I'm listening to him, right?
All right. You're doing what he says. So yeah.
I'm probably the crazier one. But he said, go get physical. You've got to get over what he called a physicophobia, which is another word he created, a fear of moving. Because when people get pain in their arms and knees and shoulders, they're afraid to move, which, they think they're hurting themselves. But he said, I've never seen anybody in decades ever get worse, getting more physical. And I was an athlete, so I was ready to go anyway. So I started to run. It must have looked ridiculous because my foot was paralyzed. I couldn't lift it up. I was dragging my toe. I can picture sparks coming off my tennis shoes because I'm going down the road as my toe's dragging. But I remember feeling euphoria. Oh, my back pain lessened. So I thought, oh, this guy's right. And suddenly it spiked and it knocked me to the ground. it got worse. Suddenly I'm thinking, wow, this doesn't make sense. If there's something wrong with my back, why did it feel good 1 second and suddenly in the next second it got worse? So I started seeing little pieces of truth in him over months and months and months, And I started golfing like he advised because I thought they told me I would never golf again. But they were wrong because I've been golfing for 26 years. It was really a series of things. There was no one great watershed moment. I wish there was. I wish there would have been. It happens sometimes while I'm talking to people, or I'm out to dinner with them, and years of back pain disappears while I'm having dinner with them. But for me, it took a long time because I had this inner stubbornness in me. I don't know if it's because of the Capricorn thing or not, but it's a very stubborn personality type. Oh, by the way, he discovered a personality type that has chronic symptoms. We should probably talk about that. He never labeled it. We labeled it. What I call neo-Sarnians, the people who took over the work, we called it a type T person for tension. Tension. Everybody in the world's got some form of a mind-body effect happening. They don't know it because they think I've got an allergy or I can't eat certain types of foods. That's all part of the mind-body syndrome. They don't know that. But there are certain people who have much higher symptoms, much more chronic symptoms, much more severe symptoms. We call those people a type T person for tension builders. And he described their attributes. They're nice people, and generally they're kind. They want to help a lot of people. They're perfectionistic. They worry more. They're hyper responsible. They want to make sure everybody's happy. It's a very cool personality type, a very unique personality type. Now everybody has it, but those people particularly have more chronic and sometimes more dangerous symptoms. They're worriers. Yeah, they tend towards hypochondriasis, and worry that, getting rejected and things like that. It's all based on childhood, of course. It starts in childhood. It doesn't suddenly happen as an adult. So it takes a long time to explain it. That's why the book took 10 years to write, and it takes a long time in sessions to explain it. So I'm talking very fast here today, hoping somebody hears this. Like when Joe Polish invited me down to Columbus, Ohio to talk to the Genius Network. And he was trying to get me to talk to them for years, and I haven't been out there, but he was finally in Ohio where I live. Now, damn it, you don't have an excuse, he said. I'm in your own state. You can't get out of this one. So I drove down. It's about 2.5 hours down to Columbus. I drove down to talk to the Genius Network. I think there was like 55 people there or something like that. I didn't know if that was a large group or a small group, but I was speaking to them, and he when he introduced me, he said, "Now, this has nothing to do with marketing, but you people need to hear this." That's what he said, and they did. They did. So I talked, and I didn't think they were listening. As I was talking, I could see them making paper airplanes. I could see them scrolling through their phone. They were staring at the ceiling like this, And I was thinking, they probably think, I paid to be in this marketing group. I want to hear about marketing, not about this. But they were listening. They were listening. And several of them came up to me. And some of them were crying. You saved my life. You saved my sister's life. You describe exactly what's going on. And it did. Several people healed from that talk, and several of them hired me later, and they healed as well. So everybody's got TMS, but there's only a small percentage of people that can see it. They can see it. And sadly, they'll have to get worse. Now, is everything a good question is everything TMS, right? Mm-hmm. Almost. There's just some things we don't understand, like Tay-Sachs disease and Huntington's disease. They're mutated through the genealogical line, the DNA. The parents are passing it on, like Huntington's. Mm-hmm. But I still believe, we can't understand, I still believe that's a problem with consciousness that's being passed through the DNA, ultimately. But those are difficult to understand. But the normal things like autoimmune things and cancers, those are definitely TMS, because I'm seeing people healing from them. They're sending me the emails. I'm working with those people and they're healing. So we know that it is. And Anita Moorjani being one of the most famous people, I think I mentioned her to you.
Yeah.
They're actually making a movie about her life. So yes, not everything, but almost.
So if a lot can be healed by TMS, well, you had just mentioned Capricorn. Are we worse? Because I'm one as well. Are we worse off than the rest? Is that the problem?
I can almost sense that in you. Just the way you handle yourself and the way you speak. You're organized. You were so organized when you were contacting me. Yeah, we're very organized. We move slowly, stubbornly, but we want to make sure it's right. We're rational thinkers, But like Yogananda, who's one of the greatest healers that ever lived, Paramahansa Yogananda, his book, The Autobiography of a Yogi, is one of the greatest books ever written. Steve Jobs passed it out like candy, and George Harrison from the Beatles, they handed it out. It's phenomenal. I think it's chapter 16. It's called Outwitting the Stars. And when I first read it, I didn't understand it, of course, because I'm not at that level of consciousness yet. I didn't understand Sarno. I didn't understand Eckhart Tolle. And now I understand what they're trying to say, because suffering pushed me to understand it. But he talks about how when we're born, we are tied to that certain space-time continuum, and that 12 fragmented zodiac thing. But the whole idea of life, he said, is to overcome it, to break that. He called it outwitting the stars, outwitting the stars. So I get it now. We do have tendencies. We have to come into life with a tendency. Something has to start us, get the ball rolling, right? It's like buying an iPhone. If you buy a laptop or an iPhone and you take it home, you start to put your personal information into those things. But they won't work unless there's already an operating system in place. And so something gets its rolling. And that the main programmers are our parents. They're our first programmers in our lives. Unfortunately, with people with health problems, they were bad programmers. There's a bad programming running within those people, and we need to stop that and reverse that, which is the good job that Bruce Lipton's doing out there, the biology of consciousness and things like that. So the whole planet consciousness is shifting right now. It's shifting. And Dr. Sarno's work is a part of it. It's not all of it, but it's a big part of it. And AI, of course, it's going to get very dark on one side and get very light on the other. Everything has this duality has an equal and opposite reaction. Everything has this other side. It's called a duality. So it's going to get very dark, but it's going to do some good things as well.
Yeah. No, it will do both, right? With good comes the bad. And
we should choose good.
Yes, I'm with you. And I think if we're optimistic and we use it for the good, then we'll go that way. And if we're not, then we may have other problems.
And the best thing, of course, is to be the good example,
Right.
Instead of preaching about goodness to everybody, be better. That's not their business. Our business is us. I've got to be better. Like Dr. Sarno told me, the heart of your book is your story, he said, the story of your life, because you serve as the example that anybody can heal.
So right? You said that he wouldn't see you because you didn't live in the tri-state area. Did you just go get a P.O. box and say, hey, I'm now next door to NYU. Can you see me? How did that work?
At that point in his career was ending at that point, of course. At that point, he didn't need to, because there's so many people wanted to see him at that point. Probably early on I could have. But I just contacted one of the doctors he had trained, and he started to help me a little bit. He was kind of guy. Dr. Sofer was his name. That he's on the frosty comic book. He was in New Hampshire. Yeah, Mark Sofer. He started to guide me a little bit. Every time I got off track, he would guide me back. Then I ultimately healed, and I never didn't get to meet Dr. Sarno in person, although I kept in contact with him, email and on the phone. And so I wish I could have given him a big hug, but I never got the chance. He was so private. He was intensely private man, but he saved millions of lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm able to help them because of him only.
Is Dr. Sofer still practicing or?
No, he's stopped too. This is the shame. All the people he trained are leaving, they're dying or they're not practicing anymore. And so they want me to go talk to the medical schools to try to get this going. But I said, I'm going to have to get bodyguards.
Well, that's what I was wondering. How do you, well, the evolution of this, you have turned this into your calling.
Yeah.
From the healing to a calling. And now from a calling, how do you carry this on to a legacy that you can continue on yours and Sarno's, TMS? Because and you just mentioned it, if Sofer's no longer practicing, where will it go, if more people aren't trained in it?
Well, that's another good question. You could write a book on that as well. I actually am. I guess my legacy will be the books.
Mm-hmm.
But the question reminds me of something Clancy McKenzie used to say to me in email. He helped me with my first book as well. He was a child psychiatrist for. I'm not allowed to say the word Michigan because I live in Ohio. That state up north. The state up north.
Yeah.
But he would always sign his emails to me, "All glory to God," which you never hear scientists say ever. He was a very beautiful, which I can see now why the universe sent him to me to help me understand anger and childhood issues and stuff. So hopefully, the work will take people to God. I'm hoping. But of course, you got to buy the books sometimes to get there. Right? There's stepping stones, right? So yes, ultimately, I hope people become more loving and more spiritual and more peaceful and more happy and healthier. That's the legacy. It's the people's lives you have changed, right? Dr. Sarno's legacy are people walking around, running, laughing again, happy again. That's his legacy, not really the books, I guess.
Right. Yeah. And I think that if we can figure out how to build this so that your books, his books, and there are people that are willing and wanting to carry it on, and that they're able to carry it on, because that would be a beautiful thing, so that it just doesn't go away. Because finding a book with dust all over it is hard to rejuvenate and get moving again. So we want to make sure tens of thousands of people can continue to be healed from chronic pain.
Plus, people have taken his work and distorted it and diluted it and claimed it for themselves. Changing the name of it, they changed the name of it. It's not TMS anymore, even though it's his work that saved their life. They changed the word TMS. They don't like that. They want to take the glory for it. I don't want any glory here. None. Yeah. I just want to be a conduit to get people to the truth. So we have to be careful. A lot of people call themselves TMS experts, and they are not TMS experts. I've helped them to heal. I know they don't know it, but they're still got a lot of clients. And so I remember George Groddick. He was the greatest healer that I had run across when I was writing The Great Pain Deception. He was a German student of Freud's in the early 1900s. He was absolutely brilliant. He was so brilliant that Freud began to idolize him. And Freud didn't idolize anybody. Freud idolized himself. But he idolized him. This guy was so brilliant. He became a medical doctor, Groddick. And he realized at some point, I'm not doing anything as a doctor. He said, I had two patients with the same diagnosis. One died and one lived. And he recognized that it was their belief. The one believed he was going to die. The one believed he was going to live. I'm just a facilitator. So he went into massage, get rid of tension, right? Massage therapy and psychotherapy, get to their thoughts, okay? Because it's tension, which comes from stress. And so I remember he said, as a matter of fact, I have it on my wall up here somewhere. I have all kinds of things pasted on the wall. It looks like a serial killer's house. Whenever I'm writing a new book, I don't want to forget it, so I'll staple it to the wall right away. He said we'll
just go with you're the profilers chasing the serial killers instead. How's that?
I'm chasing the truth. How's that?
Yeah, there you go.
He said the very first perverters of any doctrine are its very first disciples. That's right. They're the first ones to distort it immediately. I haven't changed his work, but I've taken it deeper into the spiritual realm. It's, medically, it's the same, and psychologically, the same thing that he did. So he wrote me a letter before he died. It's hanging in my hallway in a big frame. It was a beautiful letter, handwritten. He was dying at that point. And it's beautiful. It took me days to figure out what some of the words were because he was so labored. He was so weak, at that point. But it was beautiful. Thank you for representing me. Although I want to make it clear today, I don't represent him or his family or anybody. Okay. I represent TMS, this baby of his, right? I don't represent him. Okay. I would never try to speak for somebody that's a legend like that. Okay. But it works. If anybody is listening to what we're talking about right now, it works. I've got tens of thousands of emails from people, probably more than that, for healing from autoimmune things and chronic pains and digestive problems and cancer and weird things. There's a lady in California who lost her hearing. She went deaf. And it didn't take long to get it right back once she understood why it disappeared. See, the cause is always what we're looking at, the cause.
So is there, that leads me to a couple of things. Is there a warning sign that people could actually be aware of? Or is that not something that's out there?
Well, the warning sign is the symptom.
Okay.
When you get a symptom, whether it's a migraine or cancer or anything like that, that's a warning sign. It's a warning.
And so besides Capricorns, are there other personality types that have a proclivity to this?
Now that you say that, I'm going to start asking people. Yeah. I just for my own curiosity, I'd like to understand, although I'm sure it's all over the map, right?
Well, hey, you have their birth dates from the work you do. Maybe you just start your own little quick research and say, you could categorize them by the 12 months there. I'm
going to start asking people and have I don't know if it's an actual study or not, but I'm just going to directly ask them just out of curiosity. I was asking people a few years back, and it astounded me that 22 people in a row, which is really statistically not possible, right? 22 people who hired me in a row were the youngest child in the family. And so I started thinking about that, talking to Dr. McKenzie, who was an expert in birth order and childhood psychiatry. And so I started talking to them, what do you think, what were you thinking in the family? And they would say, I always felt like I was born into this already pre-existing family, and I was an outsider trying to get attention, and I could never get accepted into their unit. And so they would go off to do great things. Some of them are Oscar winners. I've worked with Academy Award winners. Some of them are ballet dancers. They end up being very accomplished human beings. And they will be honest with me, and they will say, I did it to get the attention of my parents. Which is right. That's why people go off to be great sometimes, because they're trying to get the love from their parents, which is what Sarno talked about.
Yeah.
There's a lot of psychology involved in this work. I sometimes wish I would have been a psychologist, but I think schooling would have led me down the wrong path. It would have been academic and not real stuff.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think that, I don't think that you could put a label, as we mentioned, on, oh, you're this or that, and therefore you will get here or not. I think it's, from a variety of sources, various ways, and it's just, how present are you and how aware are you? And then are you open, or do you need something else? I mean, I don't know. We're similar. I was brought up with, pain is just weakness leaving the body. And so you push through. That's
athletes learn young, you got to push through pain. You have to.
Right.
Yeah. So, but, people think they're hurting themselves. It does hurt, by the way. When Sarno said to go back golfing again, and I had a paralyzed leg and I couldn't breathe because the pain was so bad, I couldn't even touch my kneecaps. That's how bad. I couldn't bend over enough to touch my kneecaps. And I'm out there, I got a small bucket of balls and I try to swing like this and it dropped down to the ground. Oh, it hurt. But I kept going. Month by month, I was hitting more golf balls and more golf balls. I was going back to get more to hit. And suddenly one day in the year 2000, I realized I don't have any symptoms, any more pain for the first time in my life. So people obviously would say, hey, well, golf is the answer. It could be. A lot of people write to me, thank you. I stopped golfing, but when I read your book, I went back to play again and it went away. So thanks for saying that. But golf was just a tool, of course. It's not the answer.
Right. So now repressed emotions, anger, grief, fear, are those a common theme or thread?
Yeah. And of course, that one that's most underrated is sadness. A lot when people lose a loved one, they die, that's when they get health problems fast. And a lot of rage from losing the loved one, a lot of resentment to that. Like my father died a few months back, and my mother's in the stage of being angry at him right now. She's going through the stages, angry at him. Of course, he can't help it. But so we go through all these emotions. They become either, like he said, too powerful, too threatening, or too dangerous. And so we repress them. And when you repress this vile energy, I guess you could call it, that is the symptom. Disease and pain are emotions that are repressed and suppressed. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Which all come from a thought process. All emotions come from a thought process. And so the thought process is the thing that needs corrected. And no thought means presence. We're right back to the answer again, which was presence, which I had done by accident. I didn't even know what presence was back then, but I became present. Now I teach it. I took a course off of Eckhart Tolle on how to teach it, because he's the man, and him and Michael Singer. And it works. It works. But you have to be present. If you're studying about presence, you're never going to be present. And they have to understand what it means, first of all. Mm-hmm. And so, there are many different paths, but the end game is the same. It's the same. Full consciousness, God, happiness, joy, peace, love, whatever you want to label it, right? Because those are just labels. They don't mean anything. It's the experience of those things that you want. It's the experience of them. That's the goal. I call it God because I grew up in a Christian household in Ohio. We always referred to it as God, but that's just a name. A lot of spiritual teachers don't like to use the name God because they don't like to confine God. They don't want to limit it by, imprisoning it somehow. So I understand what they're saying too, but everybody's looking for the same thing. It's a beautiful state of oneness and being, right? That's the ultimate goal. Now, heaven.
Heaven. That's beautiful. That is beautiful. So yeah, I love that. And so if you could give the listener something to take away, to chew on, to make a difference, what would that be right now?
Ooh, that's a good point. It would all depend on what their level of consciousness is. Okay. Mm-hmm. Of course, I am nowhere near fully conscious. That's my goal. I'm way more conscious than I was back then, 30 years ago, way more conscious of what's going on. Okay. But it's to me, it's like, I'm so slow, but it's more and more conscious. Sometimes there might be somebody listening to this that heals from listening to us. Mm-hmm. That used to surprise me, but it doesn't anymore. Okay. Because they're ready and they're right on the edge. And, all they needed was that light bulb moment. So your question is a good question, but it depends on where they're at. That might not be enough for somebody else. Okay. Mm-hmm. But generally speaking, I think you're asking generally, right? Generally speaking, I would get the books, get my book and Dr. Sarno's book if you want to. That's a good start. That's good. My book really encapsulates all four of his books into one book. And so those are good starts right there. And start to try to understand what's going on. And then you will heal eventually.
Yeah, I started with your top 10 list and then worked through Sarno's books. And then I went through all your books.
Yeah.
So I did it. And I don't know if that was good or bad or different, but I looked as as a busy person who reads a lot of books, that if I could, what the heck, let's go with the short one first and see what happens.
Yeah.
Do I like it or not?
If I don't like it, I'm not reading the long book. If I don't like it, I don't want to waste my time. Let's read the short one, right?
Right. Yeah. Let's read the short one. Then we'll get to the 400 pager and the 200 pager.
Do you see what I'm reading now about Capricorns?
Yeah.
That's the rational, logical thinking that they would do. And that's how I would do it too,
Yep. And then over a long weekend, I read 2,000 pages between you and Dr. Sarno. So.
Yeah, but you did it logically.
Yeah. We'll tell Janelle that.
That's how I would have done it. They would, if you're going on to Amazon and you're kind of interested in TMS and you see this guy, Steve Ozanich, and this guy, medical doctor, they always go to the medical doctor first. They think, oh yeah, in this case, that wouldn't be bad because he was the father, right? But if you go to medical doctors about back pain, you're going down the wrong path on Amazon pretty much all the time.
Yeah, no, and I think that's true. And then it's a lot, it's unfortunate that people's good works can be tainted and or skewed. And then also just taken as their own rather than acknowledging where it came from. And
imagine how many times that's happened throughout history. Like Nikola Tesla, he should have been a god, but the business is kind of pushed him out of the picture, And who was it? Westinghouse, I think, came in and became the hero. Yeah, we have no idea. But, the people who are doing it for the right reasons in God, they don't care.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing it for your ego. If you're doing it for ego, it's not going to be good work ever.
Ego gets in the way of so many great things. It's unfortunate. And, it can drive you if you use it correctly. But if you don't, it can drive you in the wrong direction pretty fast and pretty hard. And then you ultimately crash. So
yeah, definitely. Remember what Wayne Dyer called ego? Do you remember what he referred to ego as? Edging God out.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Pushing the truth out of the picture.
Right. Yeah. Edging God out is ego because you're putting yourself in that.
Yeah, you're putting yourself ahead of the real cause, the real truth, all of that stuff. But that's also, if people can't see that, then they'll get there eventually, I suppose. I've been very fortunate. The people that hire me are generally spiritual seekers. I heard you talking about that, and that's what I wanted to focus on. So those are the people coming to me, which is okay. I guess this is going to be my mission. I guess it might change eventually, but it's been the mission for a couple of decades so far. And
I think that you found your purpose and your calling and your mission, and the world needs you to continue to pursue that and continue to heal and to carry on, not only Sarno's work, but your own work. And with that, they can, soon you'll be able to do it on audio for those that don't want to actually have to read about fixing themselves. They can hear about fixing themselves. And then how do people get a hold of you? What would be a next step? What's a process? What does it look like? How many times do I see you? Do I sign up for a monthly session? What does it look like when you work with people?
SteveOzanich.com.
Mm-hmm.
Usually takes one session most of the time. And their consciousness has shifted enough where they can go on their own. I don't need to hold their hand or anything anymore. Sometimes I've had people, one lady comes to mind, she came back 3 times, I think, and then she healed. She was really in bad shape though. Sometimes they'll come back, even if they healed, they want to hear more about the spirituality. So they come back even after they've healed. So yeah, it's different, but one session will get you, we're trying to get this third eye opened right here.
Mm-hmm.
To open the right, correct eye. Okay. And of course, I'm working on that on myself as well. It reminds me of when I was in college at Youngstown. I should have been studying, and I was playing pool all the time. And they had like a 40-table pool hall, and I was down there, and I got really good. you're too good, actually. I was in tournaments and things like that. And they had a great hustler there. He was a phenomenal player. He still blows my mind away. We called him Smiley because he was always smiling. But he was so good, people wouldn't even play him after a while. He could run rack after rack after rack, double kick shots, triple banks. He was phenomenal. And he says to me, "You could be hustling people." I said, "No." I said, I'm not. I knew how good he was. I said, "I can't do that. I know how good you are." He goes, "That doesn't matter." He said, "You go up to the table and you look at two guys playing, you know immediately if you can beat them, right?" I said, "Yeah, probably. I can tell if they're picking the wrong shot and all that, or if they're really good, I don't want to mess with them, right?" He goes, "Those are the people you hustle, the ones you're better than." And the same thing holds true for healing. I just know more than somebody else does. But there's other people who know more than me. They're more conscious than me, right? So anybody can help anybody here. Anybody. For what you already know through your wife and through, talking to me, you already know more than about 80% of the people in the world as far as healing. You can help a lot of people to heal. And you're doing it with this today. You're actually doing it with this today. So yeah, you can help.
Yeah, I've given a lot of people your contact information, your phone number. They have talked with you and have healed. Once you worked with Janelle, my wife, and I saw that, and then through our conversations over time, I've always appreciated it. But I have given it out. I actually gave your phone number out on Saturday at a 4th of July party. Somebody was complaining of some pain, and I said, "I know the solution for you." And so I gave it out on Saturday. So I'm always, thinking of how can I help and serve others and do it in a way that I guess is a non-invasive.
Yeah.
And, so definitely I think that's important. And so, to close this out, a couple of things. One, can you describe healing in your words in a sentence?
Healing, TMS healing?
Just, yeah.
Dr. Sarno called it knowledge therapy. I refer to it as awakening. When you start awakening, which would be to start to realize I'm not this body, I'm not my mind, I am the consciousness that inhabits it. That's when the real healing takes place. Those are the people who heal deeply, the deepest. But like I said, it depends on where you're at on this consciousness scale. Something else could help somebody to heal, like saying it's oxygen flow. That might help somebody to heal, just saying that, But some people need more than that. So generally speaking, it's about becoming more conscious. That's what's happening. They think when people think there's something wrong with their body, they're screwed right there.
Right.
My body. So there's two types of people in the world. Remember the movie? Bill Murray's? What About Bob was one of my favorite movies. What About Bob? There's two types of people in the world, he said. Those who like Neil Diamond and those who don't. But in my mind, there's two types of people in the world. People who think something's wrong with their body and the people who know that there isn't. Even though the body is the report card that's expressing it. And then we're not talking about accidents, right? We're not talking about that. And by the way, I should have said this earlier. This is not an anti-doctor message. I hope people don't get that impression because I kind of bash them sometimes, even though he told me not to. This is not an anti-doctor message. We need good doctors. They're saving lives every day. This is really an anti-wrong diagnosis message. Mm-hmm. Like the doctor says, you got a herniated disc, let's operate on it. The operation is not the wrong modality, it's the wrong diagnosis. It's not a herniated disc problem, it's TMS. Okay, so I'm not bashing doctors, we need them.
Right. We need great doctors. We're grateful for doctors. I think that we need them for different purposes and different times and different things. I think sometimes the messaging could be better. They should not instill into somebody's brain, you will never heal from or this is not something you will ever I mean, it's not a, it needs to be, right now you may have, and it looks like, and you can, and then if we reframed that, and if that little piece could then, motivate the brain to go, aha, maybe I can help, and push you through to heal and help, even if it is the doctors is necessary to heal, the brain will ultimately do that for you. And I think just the shift for how the messaging is done would go a long way from that. But
that's a good point. If I do get to talk to medical schools, and the TMS doctors tell me that I should, because I guess they have to take electives outside of the field of medicine, like extracurricular things for full credit. And this could be one of the things, TMS, that we considered outside, right? But I would talk to them about their bedside manner first. They're killing people. I mean, literally killing people by saying, I don't know, this is deadly. It's crazy. Look, this, I sometimes hold this guy's book up, Kyle's book, Death of a Cancer Patient. See, he crossed the word patient off. So it says The Death of Cancer. That's a good title.
I like that, yeah.
Here he is on the back. He was 36 years old. He had a few months to live. Here he is on the beach having fun with his kids, okay? See these Post-it notes he put on the back here?
Yeah.
Get rid of chemo, get rid of death, get rid of radiation, get rid of the allopathic stuff. See what he check marked green? Meditation, spirituality, life. He's fine now. Okay, he didn't buy into it. But it's difficult Yogananda talked about it. Hearing about the problems is lodging it into your subconscious field. Mm-hmm. So I always, almost every commercial is a pharmaceutical commercial on TV, because they control the news, they control the movies, they control everything now, right? And so my mute button's worn out because I'm muted all the time. I don't want to hear about all these symptoms because they're planting the seeds of bad health.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm planting the seeds of good health here.
That's what we want to do. We want to promote that if you're doing the right things, eating, working on your brain, working on your body, working on your emotions, that the body is self-healing. It's built to heal. Dr. Don Wood says that when he talks about it. The brain is made to heal you. The body wants to heal itself. It does not want to stay out of symbiosis. It wants to go back to it. So it will do what it can.
That's a good point. Dr. Sarno said the same thing. He said he noticed the scar in the back of his hand one time, and he said how fast it healed. And how the body wants to be well. That's its normal state, is wellness. If it's not well, something's off balance, which is why the balance symbol's on the front of my book. Something's off balance there. And it's usually, the person's thought process, the energy levels are off balance. Something's off kilter there. So we need to come back to balance again at some point, and then we heal. So, yeah, that's a good point. I've heard that name several times that you just said. People have asked me about that person.
Oh, Dr. Don Wood?
Yeah, I don't know who that is, but
I should do an introduction to you, because between the two of you and the naturopath, you two I have phone numbers and emails sent off to you two constantly about you for healing. So the two of you could phenomenal work, and I actually saw it firsthand with Janelle. Like we said, we went through the journey last couple of years, and we saw traditional and Eastern and Western medicine all at once, and along with yourself and Don Wood. And when we saw you, it was noticeable, the change. And then we paired it with work that we went down to Orlando actually and saw Don Wood and spent 3 days there. And then we went to Dr. Greg Eckel in Park City, Utah. And so we put the three of you together, and then Janelle continued the work that you had shared, and then also some work from Don, with the protocols that Greg had created. And over the last 6 months, her body actually does not show any sign of the sickness that she had.
She's back to normal. She's back to where she should be. She had to talk to me because her liver was enlarged when I was talking to her. I got back with her. How you doing? The liver went back to normal size. I guess it didn't surprise me because I'm seeing people heal from weird things, bizarre things.
Oh, and this was weird, right? She had one of the strangest, hardest, most negative diagnosis that I could ever, I've heard of, and your work.
She wanted to deal.
Amazing.
She wanted to deal. Let's put it that way. That's why you jumped on it. A lot of people don't want to, and I know that sounds strange. They think they do, but they really don't want to. And if you look at the Spontaneous Remissions Project, which is the longest ongoing study for people who had miraculous cures, they were supposed to die, and boom, they're not dead. The last time I looked at it, there were 9,000 people in there. They were trying to study, and they're trying to find what are the commonalities. Why are these people living when they're supposed to die? Which is a good study. And of course, there's several common threads running through it, but probably the most common one was they didn't believe their doctor. They were buying into it. I'm not dying. I don't believe it. You got to do that. You got to reject it. Even though if they're there at the right time, they might save your life. If something needs sewed up or transplants or something, we really need doctors for. So, yeah, this is not an anti-doctor message. At the right time, we might need one. They're that last line between death sometimes, that last wall.
Right.
We look towards them, and so they need to change their language when they're working with people. That's what I'd like to talk to them about.
Yeah. A person that I worked with, Dr. Jack Wolfson, the natural heart doctor. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's in Arizona, and he was a cardiologist for 20 years. And what you just said was exactly right. He goes, I was tired of being the last line of defense. When people saw me, I wasn't sure I could actually help them. I believed I could. I was trained that I could. My dad was a cardiologist. Everything in me said I could heal them until I realized that I was too late. And he shut down his normal, I guess, practice per se. And now he is trying to get people before they have to go visit the last line of defense. Now, he still refers people to the cardiologist because he knows what they can and cannot do, but he also knows what other forms and modalities can do to try and avoid having to see the cardiologist.
Well, he knows what he's talking about. Bernie Siegel contacted me and asked for a copy of my book. Remember, Love, Medicine, and Miracles was his great book.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He talks about the power of the mind. They told people before they got their chemo that it would knock their hair out. And so they gave people saline water, and 30% of the people's hair fell out, and it was just water. People underestimate the power of the mind in causing the problems and in healing. This is why we call it the mind-body syndrome. It's about mind-body healing, or quantum healing, if you want to call it that. Healing at the quantum level. The mind is all powerful. It's all powerful. So it's really control of the mind at some point, or a resetting of the mind. Or I remember the line from the Bible, as a man thinketh, so shall he be. I don't know who said that, but I remember being in the Bible, and that's true. Yeah. True. I do not have a disease. I am healthy. I am healthy. Keep sending the signals to the cell to become healthy. And that's why your wife is a great example of healing. She is a beautiful example of healing. She's a beautiful person to start with, which is a beautiful example of healing. She's going to help a lot of people just with her example.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we did this. I'm glad you reached out. Thanks for being patient with me.
Hey, well, I'm glad we were able to make this happen. I'm excited to share, and we will put in the show notes, the steveozanich.com, and a link to the book, and also the audiobook, which is most exciting. And we'll just look forward to the next best-selling book coming from you, number 5. And I look forward to this, and let's do it again.